Back on this guy's economy. Maybe you guys saw Jerome Powell talking about what it is that they're now going to do in response to this economy, and just how much of it they're going to do.
In support of our goals, in light of the balance of risks to employment and inflation, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to lower our policy interest rate by a 1/4 percentage point. As a separate matter, we also decided to initiate purchases of shorter-term Treasury securities solely for the purpose of maintaining an ample supply of reserves over time, thus supporting effective control of our policy rate. Inflation has eased significantly from its highs in mid-2022, but remains somewhat elevated relative to our 2% longer-run goal. Very little data on inflation have been released since our meeting in October.
There's Jerome Powell, someone I have to listen to 3 times before I fully understand what he's talking about. Man, I had one professor like Jerome Powell once, and I was like, oh my God, like, I think I need to have this guy repeat everything. Like, he's not speaking, like mumbled or nothing, but guy just, man, I don't know. There's something about the way he speaks and what he's talking about that just goes in one ear and then just like stays in that one ear. Doesn't even go through. Anyways. He's a boring guy. Anyway, so Jerome Powell is talking about this Fed rate, this rate that they're now dropping. They're dropping it again. Maybe Donald Trump will be happy, but he did also mention this inflation rate is going at a pace that they're not really comfortable with. Maybe that's reasons why he's dropping this rate just a little bit. But more about that inflation that's going on and the reasons behind it.
Total PCE prices rose 2.8% over the 12 months ending in September. And excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices also rose 2.8%. These readings are higher than earlier in the year as inflation for goods has picked up, reflecting the effects of tariffs.
So the inflation for goods is picked up because of tariffs. Isn't that weird? It's like people have been saying that forever. It's almost like people were saying it while the president of the United States was campaigning and said that that's not how these things work. He's always done that. And it's pretty much common knowledge, it always has been, that that's the case. But in a fascist administration, what you do is you don't listen to normal reality. You just screw yourself over for the sake of the ego of the dictator that's in the White House. Hey, speaking of that dictator that's in the White House, he is so upset. He's mad that boring Jerome Powell was talking like that and mentioned what tariffs do, reality.
When we announce good results, the market should go up. Now it's when you announce good results, Michael, the market goes down because they say, oh, that means things are good. That means we're going to kill it by raising interest rates. I think it's really wrong. It should be the opposite of what it is now. It should be the way it used to be. We announce good results, the market should go up, and we should keep driving it up and have it keep going up and let it be much, much bigger, much, much better. And, growth doesn't mean inflation. They're always afraid that, and if there is inflation, that's okay, then we can slow it down. But we should be able to do a lot better than 3 and 4. We're scheduled to be at 4%, which is pretty amazing because we have a deadhead Fed hair. I mean, this guy, the head of the Federal Reserve is a stiff. And, you fight that. It's amazing. We fight that, and yet interest rates are going down, except with him, not too much. He did a rather small number that could have been doubled, at least doubled. And that's the other thing. I think the rates for the United States are always the lowest in the world because without us, there is no world. Without this economy, there's no world.
Does anything he say ever make any sense? So of course, he's unhappy at the level of the rate that Jerome Powell and these guys decided to drop it. It's what he always wants, but it's not enough. It should be doubled. It should be doubled of all that. Again, if we're in this golden age that he keeps talking about, while at the same time in a rebuilding age because he inherited a bad economy, both things can't make sense at the same time. But anyways, we'll go with the golden age part that he's talking about. That's when Fed rates aren't dropping. Why would they drop Fed rates when everybody's got money and then everyone else can make more money off of any kind of loans or house purchases or cars and all that stuff that you would like to buy with all that money and all those jobs that everyone has. But instead, he wants the rates to be cut while we're in a golden age. He wants things to his reality to be fit, regardless of what his actual reality is. But there's a big part of the reality of this economy that he keeps ignoring. even on the parts when he's bragging and lying about everything else that's happening with tens of millions and billions and trillions of dollars coming in. There's another big part about it. And boring ass Jerome Powell again, he addressed that.
Why did we move today? I would say point to a couple things. First of all, gradual cooling in the labor market has continued. Unemployment is now up 0.3 from June through September. Payroll jobs averaging 40,000 per month since April. We think there's an overstatement in these numbers by about 60,000, so that would be negative 20,000 per month.
So again, like they've suspended all these numbers for jobs. This is the big part of it that they just don't even want to talk about. They've been saying we've been getting out 20,000 jobs added, which is already paltry enough. This is what Trump's people said after they suspended any kind of normal accounting for job numbers, unemployment numbers and all that. But they've overestimated by about 60,000 with that number, according to Jerome Powell. So actually, we've been losing about 40,000 a month. 40,000 jobs a month being lost. That's why also this administration doesn't like any of when they revised the numbers a month later, but they eliminated all that. Have we heard anything about the Bureau of Labor Statistics coming back around after he fired the commissioner of that and said he's going to appoint someone else that's going to do the job right? And then I remember those folks with Trump derangement syndrome said weird things like, they're not going to revive anything from the BLS. They have no interest in doing that because all it can give them is really bad news, because all he comes up with, all of his policies produce is really bad news because he's a really, really bad president. In fact, he's a fascist. But I'm glad someone finally asked him, because since none of his points make any sense, since at the same time there's an affordability crisis, while at the same time affordability is also a hoax, someone finally asked him, what the does that mean, you dummy?
We all up in last night's rally. Can you clarify, you have called the affordability crisis as a Democratic hoax, but you also want to make America affordable again?
No, the word that they use is a hoax, and because they're the ones that caused the problem. I'm talking about when you're trying to say it a different way. Now, it's pretty simple though if you listen. It's a hoax where they created the problem. They're the ones that gave the high prices. So when they use the word affordability, they shouldn't be using that word because they're the ones that created this problem. They created the highest inflation in history, and they created the highest prices in history. And now we have to get those things down. But when they look and they say affordability. They never discuss it. They just say the election's about affordability.
The Democrats gave high prices. What does that mean they gave high prices? Does he think that Joe Biden was walking in every grocery store in America and was just like slapping new stickers on everything? What do you mean he gave high prices? He declared high prices. He told everyone that they have to raise their prices. He doesn't know. He doesn't know anything. What is he talking about? What is he actually talking about? One of his people in his cabinet, in his administration, she also doesn't know what she's talking about. And for some reason, finally, this Bloomberg reporter decided to tell her, we don't know what you're talking about or why you're saying these things. This is Kelly Loeffler. Let's see if it'll come up this time.
Just to get back to where we started here, Administrator, to make sure I understand, you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that consumer confidence was rebounding and that inflation was cooling. Since we haven't managed to find evidence of that in our conversation today, is that your expectation in the near term, or is that something you believe is actually happening now?
It's actually happening. The Trump agenda is counterinflationary because if you look at gas prices, if you look at interest rates, down double digits since the president came in just the first 10 months. So what we're seeing is major family expenditures are coming down. But look, it's going to take time.
If you've been listening as much as I've been forced to, it's the same recited talking points. She doesn't even know what she's talking about anymore. She just got grilled that whole thing in her head, and this anchor had to ask her, we have no evidence of any of these things that you're talking about. What about gas prices will prove that? You mean those higher gas prices? You mean the opposite of reality of what we're seeing? If you look at the gas prices, you'll understand that things are great. There's no inflation. If you listen to Jerome Powell tell you what's happening, you'll understand that actually inflation is happening at a rate that he's uncomfortable with.